Hello, everyone. I'm Rauol, the CEO and co-founder of Real Vision. I hope the feed's okay here. We're in the Cayman Islands, so it's sometimes a little bit slow, but I'll do my best. What I'd like to do is talk about the retirement crisis that we have started featuring on Real Vision about. It's a really, really important issue for us all, and probably the most important issue in all financial markets. Most people don't really realize it because the pension is the sort of thing that you keep in your background, and you assume that your pension fund manager or your investment advisor is going to do the best work for you to make sure that they are looking after your fiduciary duties to reach your retirement dreams. But my concerns for some time are that those retirement dreams are unobtainable and that people aren't treating your money as they should do, and that you are taking too much risk that you don't really understand. I did a video about a year and a half ago, which was the coming retirement crisis. 2 million people watched it on YouTube, and it was a viral hit. And it really struck a chord and made me realize how little people actually knew about the issues that they've got with their pensions. What they kind of know is there's a growing sense of unease that the amount you've saved is not going to be enough to retire on. Or if you're much younger, then the opportunity set that you have is probably not going to realize your future dreams either. You see, for somebody who's young, you've got the issue that equities are at all-time high valuations. The bond market's at all-time low yields. Property prices are at all-time highs. So there is almost no asset. Credits too is at all-time record highs in valuation. So you almost have nowhere where you can have a future expected return that's positive. When things are valued this high, valuations tend to be mean reverting over the longer cycle, and therefore the chances of maybe a 10-year period of negative returns at this point are relatively high. But even worse is what happens if you're about to retire soon. If you're in that baby boomer bracket, let's say you're aged between 60 and 75, that's where my real concerns lie for now. So having seen the kind of levels of interest that we had with the original piece that I did, I decided to get the editorial team to put together for Real Vision, in typical Real Vision fashion, that kind of unbiased deep dive analysis of what's really going on and dig into all of the issues involved. I kicked off the week with a video I made free that many of you have seen, which was the retirement crisis part 2. And that's where I laid out the next steps, what I think is going on here, and how concerned I am about the system that we built around your retirement savings, and how I don't think you're going to be served by the asset allocations that you have and the expectations that you have. And I think the pensions industry is creating a problem. So what kind of problem am I talking about? Well, you've kind of read everywhere that states like California or New Jersey have massive black holes, and Illinois is another one, have massive black holes in their pension funding. What that means is they have defined benefit contribution systems, which means that they'll give you a percentage of your final year's salary, in theory, when you retire. So if you're a firefighter in Illinois, you're hoping to get 60% of your final year's salary, and on a retirement age of, let's say, 65. But the problem is they don't have enough money to actually honor those promises. And people don't realize it. So the first trick they pull is pushing out the retirement age. Oh, we're going to move it to 67, we'll move it to 70, making it ever more difficult to retire. But then when it comes to it, they're not going to meet the obligations. And we've seen it all over the place, particularly also in the private sector, the corporate pension plans, where they're starting to say, well, sorry, we didn't kind of mean what we said. The promises we made, we're going to have to break, and you're going to get less money. So that's not fair. You've saved hard-earned money into the pension system, and you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting because they've made too many promises. One of the facts is people are living longer than they ever expected them to. Also, bond yields are much lower than any of the models had. So how it really works is when you go into retirement, your asset pool basically goes into an annuity, which is essentially the bond yield, and then they calculate the number of years they think you're going to retire. Both of those are screwy, so in which case there's not enough money for you. So I'm really worried about that. I'm also really worried about how you guys are dealing with your 401ks and how your pension fund managers are dealing with your pensions still. So if you think about the pension system, they too know that they haven't got enough money to pay your obligations, the promises of your retirement dreams. So what they've done is they've taken more and more risk in your later years, when your risks should be reducing. The standard asset allocation model should be that you reduce risk the older you get, because you can't lose your pile of capital when you retire, because you don't have a job when you retire, so you can't buy the dip. So it's okay for me in my early 50s or somebody in their 30s or 40s, because you can buy the dip if you get a big sell-off. But they're taking a lot of risk, assuming that there will be no sell-off, because there's no other choice for them to try and meet that funding gap. So what does that mean in reality? It means that they've got record high allocations to equities, record high allocations to credit. Now remember, these are all-time high valuations. They've been piling money into this, particularly into index funds as well, just to lower the cost by a small fraction, hoping to eke out some extra returns. So that's a really big problem that they're taking. Why there's a problem here is because the next recession is going to come. I think we're going into it now. I think the coronavirus and the trade wars were the tipping point, and the Federal Reserve raising rates beforehand were one of the key factors that caused it. So why does recession worry me? It's because almost every time we've had a recession, the stock market halves. And again, if you're 30 years old and the stock market halves, great, because you can buy more at lower levels if you think it's going to continue going up over time. But the problem is if you retire and the average baby boomer is 65 years old, well, there's a different mindset that takes place. You're going to try and protect your retirement savings if you see the market sell off. So we get something called negative convexity. It's a higher propensity for people to sell in a down market as opposed to buy, because there's no dip buyers, because the people with all the money are the baby boomers, and they have to sell to realize their final pool of assets. And if they can see it shrinking because the equity market's falling, they're going to desperately be trying to sell to get and realize anything that they've got and then try and put it into bonds. The problem is, in a market like that, bond yields are probably zero. So you've got this awful dynamic where people are going to sell in record numbers. They're going to sell and they're corralled into fewer and fewer index names. People like Apple, Amazon, Google, companies and Microsoft, companies like that, they're corralled into a very small number of names, all within index funds, and they're going to need to get out all at the same time. So that could create some really problematic markets and could really, really hurt everybody's retirement savings. That's what I'm terrified about.